Coming to you from the M&M Exterior Studio in Nooksville, Virginia, this is Flushing It Out with Samantha Spittle, the introvert's extrovert. She talks to people so you don't have to. For now.
I'm excited that we get to do this, and I'm so glad we've connected and crossed paths, because so much of what you do is like, yes. Just love when I read people's work that's like, yes, that's me. So I would love for you to introduce yourself here with Kristin Zucaro. And so tell us who you are, and I would love to jump into your story.
Awesome. And thank you. And I should have asked this at the beginning. Do you prefer Samantha or Sam?
Either. I always say I introduce myself as Samantha. Mm-hmm. And then I talk about myself, if I do, in like a story setting, as Sam half the time. So it's real. It's whatever I go by, whatever feels right for the person I'm with.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm Kristin Zucaro. I go by Kristin, right? There's no like special short. There could be some short nicknames there.
Have you ever had people that are like, hey, Chris, they start calling you Chris all of a sudden?
Yeah. Actually, And that's, it's okay. My closest friends call me Kay, and that works. And I'm like, that's how I know you're a good buddy. If you're like, hey, Kay, right?
That's my middle name, by the way, Kay.
Oh, it's my mom's middle name.
Really? Just Kay?
Just Kay?
Yeah, mine's Kaye. Yeah. So funny.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Love it.
So in high school, gosh, I'm thinking about some names there.
Yeah.
There was a point where people were calling me Crispy because I shut down the Chrissy thing.
Oh, yeah. That was
no good.
Yeah.
And Triscuit. Do you know the Triscuit crackers? I'm like, I don't understand. Like, am I that dry and boring that I've become a Triscuit? But,
Hey, that's a lot of people's favorite.
That was decades ago.
That was people's favorite. And that with some cheese. So good.
So good. But I digress. Yes. So I am Kristin Zucaro. I live in Sterling, Virginia, which is in Loudoun County. I am an empowerment coach for women. So I help people to break through people pleasing and perfectionism. I help them to prepare for difficult conversations, to set boundaries and honor boundaries. I help them to find their life's purpose. I found that there are so many women who get to a certain stage of life where they have this pause and they realize, wait a minute, I have been living for everyone else. And sometimes they need that support to walk through what's next for them.
Yeah.
And to walk through how to approach things differently. And that's where I come in.
I love that, because you said the pause, and I've talked with past guest Marianne Clyde. We talked about the power of the pause. Mm-hmm. And so even with life, with you, with redirecting, I love that, the pause, because if we're lucky, we have that pause, in my opinion, because, we don't need it if we but I think taking the pause no matter what in life, because we so often, we can get very focused, and sometimes we need to be, and we should be maybe, to figure things out. So it's never too late to pause and figure it out.
Never too late.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And a friend of mine, Gretchen Schutte, she's also a local to Virginia. I'm not sure if you know Gretchen. She was on my podcast a couple of months ago, and she introduced me to this term called liminal. Are you familiar with that? No.
Tell me more.
Yes. So liminal is the space between. So this has to do with that pause, right? We think about where we are and where we want to go. And we're so focused. We've got our tunnel vision, and we're so focused on the outcome that we forget to enjoy that liminal, that in-between space. And so I loved that term. That was new to me.
It's like a new word instead of journey. It's not the destination. It's the journey. It's the liminal.
Yeah.
The in-between where we are and where we're going. And how often do we, and especially women, beat ourselves up. But I think it's universal for all people. Where we think we should be and forgetting. And I've had a lot of people give me that insight, when I've said, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, with fleshing it out. And I have this mission and passion and wanting people to connect. And someone recently just said, what if where you are right now it's it.
Yeah.
It's it.
Yeah.
So.
And the rest will come when it's meant to come.
Yeah. Yep. So how did you get to this place of wisdom and, not only empowering yourself, because the secret's out. If this is what you're doing, then this is what you've been working on personally too.
Totally.
So,
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
All of the things we're working on and that we put out into the world, it really is all our own things. So how, because I think we crossed paths because of both talking about overcoming the people pleasing and working through that. So how did you get to this space you're in now?
Yeah. I got to this space due to a wake-up call that I received in 2019. So if I back up, even decades ago, I was always the overachiever, right? The person who did all of the activities in school, got the straight A's, did everything I was supposed to do, and that continued into college. Right? I took the degree path, economics, by the way, took the degree path that I was supposed to take, got the right job, climbed the corporate ladder. You know the pattern, right? We probably hear this from so many of our girlfriends, so many of our clients. It's like we do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So the wake-up call. I received a wake-up call in 2012, which was a diagnosis of thyroid cancer. And it was earth-shattering. But I got well, and I pushed it aside, and I got right back on that corporate treadmill, right? That achieving, that attaining, saying yes to everyone else and not listening to what I wanted. Come early 2019, I received a second cancer diagnosis. This one was melanoma. And I took that as a gift. I took that as a gift because it wasn't life-threatening. And I tend to minimize it too. Like I need to stop doing that. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was something that I healed. And then I made a plan. I said, you know what? I can't keep doing the work that I am. Admittedly, I was very good at it, but I hated it, right? I hated the politics. I hated the just 9-to-5 grind, lack of flexibility. I was a project manager at the time that all of this happened in financial services, very high pressure. I feel like I've just done a run-on sentence. Did I answer your question?
It was so, no, thank you for, that's powerful. I mean, I'm so grateful that you're healed and recovered. And you said so many big things in there. I mean, those health scares and, the first time just, it's fine. Everything's fine, Right. And then even I love you pointed out, like even the second one, you're like, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like,
right.
Thankfully it wasn't, but it could have been, and I think that's the whole thing with wake-up calls is that why does it have to be, life alter, like where's there that threshold where it becomes, oh, now this is big enough. Do you push that aside and you wait, let me just wait till it's a really, really big one.
A really big scare. Yeah, that's a really good point. Right. I think that's part of comparison culture, right? Like, oh, somebody else has it worse, or I have it worse, or
past guest. She wrote a book because she's had brain cancer now twice, and she talks a lot about when we've talked about the Suffering Olympics, and how it's not the suffering Olympics. That's Christina Countless, and how it's not a competition, whatever you're going through, whatever. And that's especially, I think, when talking to people with different diagnoses and traumas and all of this, we all want to compare, but it's like, well, for you, whatever that trauma is, that is trauma. It's the definition of, I think, not the formal definition, but it's like trauma is anything that our body isn't processing or some, kind of simple it down like that. It really goes to show where it doesn't matter. If it is messing up your flow in some way, it's something pretty impactful. But I think, I don't know about you, but my coping mechanism is definitely, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine.
Minimize.
Yep. The building is burning, but it's fine. At least I'm not. So that's great.
Oh, very good point. Like I've just lost everything, but yeah, I'm
here. And of course there's power to positivity, but you having that wake up call, I think that's powerful. And, thank goodness you had that, like, thank goodness you're okay. And thank goodness you've had that shift and pivot to be able to put that out there and share that with others. So,
yeah, thank you. And may I add to your definition of trauma?
Please do.
I so agree with the way you described it. And in addition to that, I recently heard, I wish I could give credit where due, but that trauma is any experience that we've had that has no relational, no relational match. I'm not describing it well, but it's like, I could go through something or you could go through something, and the healing has to do with the connection and understanding socially with someone who has also been there. That's part of, does that make sense?
Yeah. I want to dive in a little more to that.
Yeah.
Because you said all my buzzwords, like connection, healing, and so for me, when I started the podcast, I said, because I have it was funny, I was going to call it like a BS story, and it literally is like a funny story that kind of got me on this thing of like, we need to share our stuff. And, if we can't talk about that, and then the more life has happened to me and kind of something, it's like, it was a theory. It felt like in 2019, it was a theory. And 2020 made it, I guess you could say, fact. And so, I used to say, if you go through something, hard, traumatic, whatnot, sharing, needing to have a safe, maybe not on podcasts, maybe not publicly, but having a safe person to process with and share with and connect with, and then having more life experience, having all those wonderful flipping it opportunities, diving in deeper, because, when we have these hard things, they are opportunities. They don't always have to be good. We don't have to say, oh, this is wonderful. They can be really, really crappy. Yeah. But there's still an opportunity to kind of, as you did that wake up call. And so for me, it's like, oh my gosh, it's true. Like we aren't meant to do life alone. When we do go through hard things, we aren't meant to suffer alone. So expansion.
So thanks for letting me add to that too.
Please, always
so much sense. Yeah.
That's why I do this.
Yes, exactly. Flush it out. Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like I went down a winding path, and I want to make sure that I fully answered your question.
You did. Okay. And so all of that, now you've talked about with helping people with people pleasing and difficult conversations. And so it sounds like, you've gone through that in your own life. You've found the value of being present, enjoying the liminal, that space between the we are and where we are and where we want to go. I feel like when you start digging into growth and healing and all the stuff I love talking about, there's this underbelly that doesn't always get talked about. And I feel like your and I's prep conversation and notes blew that out of the water, which is, and you mentioned it already, having the difficult conversations.
Yes.
Because it's one thing to be on your own and be like, oh my gosh, I'm having all this self-discovery and I'm learning so much. But what that actually means, though, is that I'm going to make some changes in my life. And people in general, human beings, like being comfortable.
Yeah, we do.
So therefore, there has to be some awkwardness, both on our part, both on others. And it's getting to that uncomfortable and the hard conversations is, I feel like that's where it's like you're cruising down the highway, you're like top down, loving life. And then it's like, stop, uncomfortable conversations and boundaries.
That's right.
So I would love, like, oh, may I pick your brain and may you help?
Please do.
Because everyone, it doesn't matter where you're at in life. Like if it's not now, it's going to be something, because we all go through stuff. And like I said, it's one of those things that, of course, we never want anything bad to happen, but may we all wake up though, right?
Right.
May we all wake up and live our life fully aware. So
yeah, that's so true. And I think something that I've come to realize is that difficult conversations are not an if they happen, it's when. Yeah. So whether that's due to a health scare or a career change or a, death in the family or someone coming out or having a difficult conversation at work. Gosh, there's so many different places. And I think, no, I don't think, I know as a recovered people pleaser and perfectionist, my tendency was to avoid. Because if I can't be right, that's the perfectionist, and I can't make somebody else happy, that's the people pleaser. What can I do? Oh, I just avoid it. Minimize it. Don't talk about it. Avoid. Hide. Yeah. So I learned that I wasn't taught. I didn't know how to have a difficult conversation. And as it relates to difficult conversations, my goal now is to give people the tools and the support and the guidance and a listening ear to help them process and prepare for a discussion. I didn't have that support. In my family upbringing, are we allowed to curse on the show?
Oh, yeah.
Welcomed. Yeah. Okay. It was a shitstorm. Yeah. It was a shitstorm. My upbringing was one of very tumultuous in the house, perfect exterior. Don't talk about it. Don't share. Nobody can know what's happening inside. And as a result of that, I didn't know how to speak up in the discomfort because it was not modeled. And I'm happy to go deeper there. I know that's like a very general, I'm an open book, so feel free to dig if you want to know more about how that relates to helping with difficult conversations.
Yeah. Well,
today.
you know what? It's funny because I'm always on, tell people boundaries on the show, whatever anyone feels comfortable with boundaries, because we all are different. And you touched on something, and I've said before, I'm always grateful when people share their stories. And even if it's high level sharing of it, because your life is normal to you, no matter how abnormal, because what is normal, first of all?
Good point.
So there's really none. But, if one thing I've thought a lot about, for me, like kind of one of my values, I don't know if it's a formal value, but it's the whole being the same behind closed doors as you are in public.
Yeah.
That's been something that I realized from a young age that I valued. And I feel grateful because I feel that was modeled, for the most part. Like the ways I didn't feel it was maybe as a kid, it's like, well, that's also, there's also like normal stuff, but as you get older, and just more stories, it's like, wait, not everyone has the same experience. And that's just always been something heavy on my heart. And that's one of the reasons I want to share and the people that are able to share their stories, because there's so many people where they're walking around and everything's perfect. It looks perfect. And they're just, I mean, I've said it, it's you're dying inside, especially if it's a physical thing. It's you're externally great and you're dying on the inside. And so with not being prepared for the tough conversations, it's funny because it's not only, I have found through the more like life experience and whatnot connections I've made, is it's not just in the tumultuous homes. It can be in the homes that seem totally calm. Because if there is a expectation of push, repress, don't talk about, then, so I think sometimes we think, oh, I've had these, I'm basing this on conversations I've had with people. Oh, it wasn't that bad. It's not like I grew up in a loud home or a violent home or this home, but it's that if you're not taught how to have the hard conversations, it can be just as damaging and traumatic.
Totally.
So
totally. And it feels that we're very isolated, right? Because it's a catch-22, right? We're taught not to talk about the difficult things, but then, okay, here goes that relational trauma connection, right? Like if we were given the guidance or given the permission to talk about it, it would make it easier. So in a nutshell, wow, I've never shared this publicly. My close friends know about it. But I find more healing as I flesh things out. So thanks for the space. You know, it's taken some time to get over this. My father was an alcoholic, very high functioning. He worked with surgeons, so he was in the operating room, drunk, operating on patients. So that was one secret we weren't allowed to talk about because the income was very important to my family. There was also the fact that he was sleeping all over town. You know, he had girlfriends all around the town.
Wow.
And that was okay because every time he would fuck up, we would get a new vacation, a new car. My mom would get like a brand new jewelry, you know. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. He was also a revered Sunday school teacher. You know, so there's just so much. And so much. And my intent here is not to trauma dump or to trigger. My intent is to show that, oh my gosh, it's no wonder that I silenced myself because I was witness to all of this. My sister and I were witness to all of this. And seeing this just like turbulence at home, but no wonder it manifested as thyroid cancer, right? I mean, some people will believe in the energetics of this, some people won't, but I find it for me, this kind of voice connection as I'm pointing to my throat, the suppression could have led to that disease. And so for me, it's symbolic, right? That my voice now sets me free. And I want to help other women to set their voice free and to talk, to have those difficult conversations. And I've got some tactical tips, but I'm going to take a breath first.
And thank you for sharing all that, because I know it's so heavy. But what's so crazy though, and this goes back to what I said about how everyone thinks it's normal. And, you know, if it's appropriate for the person to share, you know, I never want to have anyone feel like they have to. But it's funny because you think if we didn't talk about some of our stuff, and like I said, that's why I think I'm very big on personal connections as well, you know, having private conversations where you really can dig into it, because everything you just named, I know there's people that have had the exact same experience. And if they've never been able to vocalize it to someone, they think, because, you hear someone else's problems and it's so easy. And this goes back to what you talked about earlier about the comparison. You think, oh, well, you wouldn't know. I can't say my stuff because my stuff's really bad. My stuff's, or it's not that bad. It goes either way.
Mm-hmm. So true.
And just normalizing it, because the other thing too, and actually I would love to just pick your brain for a hot second about this is, how do you talk about it now though? Because I've had people ask me this question, and then I'm just also curious because I don't have the answer completely yet, is, you said already, I'm not here to trauma dump. And I would also say, well, you're also not here. I don't know this, you can confirm it, but you're not here to shame other people, because you're just talking about the experience. And that's the way I've answered the question for people is, how do you share your story when your story contains, let's say, I can't think of the right word other than damning information, things that would be seen as hurtful, because of course, if you're sharing secrets, if something is meant to be a secret, it already is implying that it is not good.
Right.
But it is through, as you've said, the healing is through the telling. And so, yes, maybe it's all different platforms, but how have you reconciled that? And then, of course, how do you help people walk through that?
Yeah. So how have I reconciled it? I don't have a relationship with my father. I still have a relationship with my mom, and she and I have gone through a great amount of healing together. My relationship with my sister is, I'd say it's okay. It's distant. And I accept that. But as it relates to my dad, there is, I think we get to points in our life where so much trauma has happened, or so much drama, or or drama, we'll call it that, has happened, that the relationship is irreparable. And that for my own mental health, physical safety, there's no need for me to go back and have that difficult conversation. 20 years ago, I would have liked to have the tools to address it head on.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where some of these tips come in. And this sounds very formulaic, but I like formulas because it makes things a little bit easy, right? We can practice a little bit.
Yep.
So let's say that you're having a difficult situation with someone. You can address it in a way that's, number one, what is your intention? What is your expected outcome before you even have the conversation? Think about knowing that the outcome is not a given. Are you okay with that uncertainty? And how can you show up no matter what? And what I mean by showing up is, as an example for this podcast today, my intention was to be assertive. That's it. Be assertive. And what that means is sharing. I mean, notice how I sat up a little bit taller too. Because I can't be assertive if I'm slouched down here and I'm quiet in my voice. The intention is the embodiment. So if you can anchor to that embodied experience and commit to it before having the discussion, it will help you through. Does that make sense? So if you know that you have to approach a difficult conversation, if you can anchor to be assertive or be calm or be confident, whatever your intention is, stick with that, because you don't know what will happen on the other side. Okay, so now that you've got your intention, think about where the other person is. What is their skin in the game? What is their position? And I like to do that because it is a way of empathically putting yourself in their shoes even if you don't agree with them, just trying to get a taste of where they currently are.
Yeah.
And yes, there's an empathic part of that, but it's also strategic for you so that you don't get blindsided, right? We don't want to go in with our blinders on. Right. And when you are ready to have the discussion, words are very important, and use I statements as much as you can. Because as soon as we go into a conversation and start saying, you this, you that, why don't you, you did, right? It's a shaming and blaming game, and that immediately makes it an us or them situation. We really want to try to find common ground. So what does that look like? As much as you can, say things like, I noticed that, or I observed, or I would like, right? If you're making a request of someone. And then be okay with what the outcome is. I know that probably felt very formulaic.
No, it's great.
Help? Okay.
No, and it's funny how you said about having the formula one. You're an economy major. But I like that because I think for me, I've asked questions of like, how, what, because we want as humans, the formula, we want the box. And, the secret is that there is no box, it's like, it's all wide open. But if we can have tools, that's why I'm a big believer in the tools. So the formula is, it's tools, it's ways to walk through. Because as you were going through those tips, having that intention and the expected outcome. Because someone asked me one time, well, what do you, expect or need from the conversation? And I remember talking it through with them. And through that conversation, I'm sure they helped point out, like, you're not going to get that. Like, that's not going to happen. So do you even want to have that conversation? Because it's just, and that's where boundaries comes in. Because if I need XYZ, and if XYZ doesn't happen, and then that's going to cause me to blow my lid. Like if XYZ is the only thing that will keep me, at a certain place, then that's not guaranteed. And so maybe you're not at a place where you're ready to have that conversation. And same with your thing about putting yourself in their shoes and having empathy towards them. And once again, this is why having a safe person, and for you with what you do with coaching people through this, and, and therapists, that's what I have found is so crucial, because it's through the talking through and the, how you said the I statement versus the you. If you're able to talk through it, I feel for me, the more I dig into those painful places, it's like that wound, if you start picking at it. And for me, I can see how surface level I can be at I statements. But as soon as I dig down and those yous start coming out like daggers, it's become so apparent, like, oh, I'm not at a place. I have got some more healing and work to do on me before I can even have that conversation. Because once I scratch the surface, it becomes you, because there's so much hurt and pain there. So
thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that is so raw and so real. And difficult conversations, if they're going to be productive, and if you're going to reach some kind of shared end state, they're not always one time. So if you're in the heat of the moment and you're saying, I noticed and I feel and I would like, please, but then you notice, then you're finger pointing, you did this, you should, whatever. That's a good point to say, you know what? Why don't we pause? Can we cool down and revisit this? Because it's going to take time. And
and have your ears on too, your listening ears on, open, because if you are hearing you, that's also boundaries to say, you know what, let's pick this up later, because it's like going head to head, I imagine, of
Yes.
two locking horns of like, it's not gonna happen.
No, it's not. And this one is one I feel so passionate about, not only because I wish I had had the tools years ago, but I have noticed that there are certain people that I don't have healthy boundaries with, that we do lock horns, and we have gotten into a you situation, and which has led to canceled relationships, right? That's the buzzword, right? Cancel culture, right? You know, disowning and not wanting to have anything to do with me, or vice versa, right? And it's raw. It's very raw. And I don't know what my point was there, but I think we've all experienced it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you said that about disowning, you know, non-communication, no contact, things like that, it's so complicated because with boundaries, I think sometimes, or I would say actually oftentimes, no matter which side you're on, boundaries can feel personal. So if you put a boundary in place.
Yes.
And what I mean by personal, it's like, you're doing this to me. You're not talking. Why are you not talking to me? You know, or why are you not talking to us? You're doing this to us. This is to punish us.
Yes. Oh, I hear that all the time. Yep.
And it's like, no, it's to protect, you know, the person who's setting that boundary. It's like, no, it's actually to protect my mental health and, you know,
and your energy and your time and your safety, whatever it is. Yeah.
And then but then it's just as easily, I feel like if you're on that side of you're setting it, it's like, it's not about you. It's my own stuff, you know, my own things. But then if you're on the receiving end of the boundary, that it's like, why is this like, oh, I might trigger something in them and vice versa that hits those points that are not healthy.
Yeah, definitely. There is some amazing work that I've been diving into, not my own. I wish I could take credit for. There's some amazing work by, let me grab the book here. I want to make sure I have her name correct. I'm such a book nerd, by the way. All right, so this is Set Boundaries, Find Peace, A Guide to Reclaiming Yourself by Nidra Glover Tawwab. It just came out.
Yes,
she's amazing. She's amazing.
Awesome.
So I am taking my time, although I want to like inhale this book. I'm taking my time, and I have learned that there are 3 ways that we can think about boundaries. Boundaries can be healthy, they can be rigid, or they can be porous. And different people or different situations may cause us to act in certain ways, right? So as an example, as it relates to my father, very rigid boundary, not going to talk, right? My mom and I, we can agree to disagree. We have a healthy relationship. So I consider that a healthy boundary. Maybe, let me think of an example of a porous boundary. So that is what you would see in like codependent type relationships where one person is enabling somebody else with a bad behavior, and there's like flow between where one person ends and the other person begins in a bad way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Enmeshed. Yeah. Exactly. And so in this book, there's a self-assessment quiz to kind of get you in the mindset of like, where are your boundaries today? I took it about a week ago, and I'm proud to say that I am mostly healthy boundary. Mostly healthy boundary. I know that if I had taken this quiz a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have been 50-50, rigid or porous.
Yeah.
And
same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge that, healthy boundaries are what we strive for, but there are certain people where that might not happen. And we're only setting ourselves up for decreased mental health or
increased
failure,
pain.
increased pain. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
two books or two thoughts on that. First, it's funny you said about if you would have taken the quiz before. I mean, I feel like I've been talking about boundaries for years with people. You know, it's like we talk about it, and I remember thinking, well, I don't have a boundaries issue. Like I can have super porous boundaries, because when push comes to shove, I can set it, no problem. But the beauty of more life experience that's shown me is that you think that, but that's exactly why porous boundaries are not healthy, because it gets to the point where you think, oh, I'm going to shut it down, or and it's too late. It's like letting the dam down. Like, no, the dam has to stay up or else everything gets flooded. And so it was like, I was letting things get flooded because I was fine with being flooded. See, my house is up here. I don't mind. And then it's like,
it's just the basement. It's okay.
It's just the basement. I don't need, one day I'm going to need the basement one. Like, it's going to come up to once it comes to my main floor, had it not even come into the basement, it wouldn't be an issue. And what if I want the basement one day and I've just let it all come through? So for me, that's been a big learning issue.
Yeah. And this goes back to some of those difficult conversations too, right? Where I could come in to say like, I've done my work and I'm doing my thing and you need to do your work.
Ooh,
doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. But
what, like
right? Because then it's seen as an attack or, right. Almost like intervention style. Anyway, the point is, all we can do is work on ourselves.
Yeah.
All we can do is work on ourselves and be the best person that we can be and set healthy boundaries. And if someone is bringing us down, or if someone is, a toxic person, then you have it within your control to say no. No is a complete sentence. Yeah. Yes, it is.
Walk the other way. Walk the other way. It is hard. But that's why I love and appreciate fleshing it out and talking to people, because it's almost like it's the same message. It's it's like our own, I've said, it's like our own shit we have to work out.
Yeah.
But there's all the different ways it gets played out. And there's all the different stories and ways that just touch us in different ways that wake us up to different parts of ourselves that need care and attention and healing. And it's kind of, it's pulling on those threads, and you kind of see which rabbit hole you might need to go down. But building these tools that's the essential part, and once you do it, that's the other thing too, is that it's so hard at first. I said earlier about, going through some times where I've said, how will I get through this? And I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was crying about how I would get through X, because Z is a hell of a lot worse than X. But my capacity, my resiliency, the tools in my toolbox, all that, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't equipped for it. And that goes back to what you said about being equipped as kids, which is why parents, we got to work our shit out to help our kids.
That's right. That's right. And you're totally onto that. I think our kids are the same age. Both of mine are in elementary school. Is that where yours are?
Yeah, 9 and 10. Yeah.
And mine are 7 and almost 11. She'll be 11 in a couple of days. But I used to shame myself or put pressure on myself to have those difficult conversations with people in the past. We'll leave it at that. But I realized the best teaching that I can do as a mom is to model healthy, difficult conversations with my husband in front of the kids, to show the little people in the house, right? Yeah. That it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have these tough situations or things that we're dealing with, but we're not going to ignore it. And we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about it respectfully. And as a result, over time, it's already teaching them how to have healthy disagreements and conversations that I totally would have shied away from at their age.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful to have a supportive husband. I'm grateful to have the tools in my toolbox, and that we can change the future here in our own house.
It's so true. You're breaking all that stuff. But thank you so much, Kristin. We covered so much. I could talk all this stuff. Thank you for your bold assertiveness. Thank you for being assertive today and standing in your story and in your truth, because like I said, I've had so many people, and myself included, it's so important to share, but it is hard to navigate it. And when you're in the space of someone who stands so boldly in it, it just is so freeing. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you again for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I am just so grateful to be a part of what you're building and what you're sharing with the world. We need more vulnerability and authenticity, and you are helping us to get there. So thank you.
Thank you. And if people, how can people get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch is on Instagram. That's at Kristin Zucaro. Oh my gosh, did you hear that? I almost said my name wrong.
It's okay.
Okay. I'm only slightly nervous. What can I say? Kristin Zucaro. And, or you can pop over to my website, KristinZucaro.com.
That's awesome. And you host a podcast as well. So where can they find your podcast?
Yeah. So my podcast is on Spotify. It's also linked on my website. The podcast is called Curiosity, Courage, and Truth. Curiosity, Courage, and Truth. That's awesome. Yes. It's a great description of you. Oh, thank you. I love to think of it as the process, right? First, if we have no awareness, then you can't really do anything. But as soon as you have the curiosity to start asking questions about what's serving me, what could be different, what can I do, then the next step is the courage, taking that, the big steps, and ultimately living your truth. So it seems to resonate so far, and I'm really enjoying that. Yeah. That's great. Well, be sure to check out her podcast and all that she is, and hopefully people can start working on those hard conversations and those boundaries and living a full life.
And that's a wrap for now.
Thanks for listening to Flushing It Out with Samantha Spittle. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe and rate us on iTunes. For all things Flushing, visit our website at flushingitout.com. This has been a Spitfire production.
That was the greatest thing I've ever heard.